Hey, we're live again with another hot seat guest. This time I'm super excited just based on this little before we went live conversation that we were having. Super excited about this one because I am like all about presenting and breaking stereotypes and stigmas attached to neurodivergencies and mental health issues and all sorts of other stuff. And it sounds like I've got a kindred spirit here in Brian. And so, what you guys can expect from me, I'm Becky. It's on my wall. You should know that. But we're going to let him introduce himself, and I'm going to be paying attention with my analog stuff here for things that interest me, and I will be jotting some notes down while he's talking and asking questions, totally unscripted right now. We don't know what to expect. It'll go 30 to 60 minutes, kind of depending on how the flow of conversation goes. And then if anybody that happens to tune in live has questions, drop them in the comments below. We'll get them answered. If you're catching on a replay and you have questions, drop them in the comments below. I'm sure Brian will check in on this and answer questions. And then when everything is all said and done, he will drop his links for whatever he's got so you can connect with him if that's what you want to do. So I'm going to zip my mouth and let him introduce himself.
Man, do you need to catch your breath back?
Yes, I do.
That was impressive. Didn't miss a beat. Well,
No.
Let's all join hands in a moment of silence and hope that I say something worth writing down or expanding upon. I won't give you the typical biographical spiel. I'll give you the gist of what my present looks like. And I can always reach to the past as it's relevant. But presently, I am juggling, this is in my own brain, autism, ADHD, dyslexia, dyscalculia. And in my body, I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome and multiple sclerosis. So every day, I have a body that's racked with pain, has cramps, spasms, a brain that's glitchy, and has difficulty remembering things from 1 second to the next. And in the midst of all this, with my wife, I'm raising 3 boys, all of whom have autism and ADHD. And I've been running my own coaching company for the past 15 years. So regardless of all the challenges I have dug in to discover this level of resourcefulness and resilience and stick-to-itiveness that makes me not only a mule, thanks to my parents, but unstoppable. If something is in my way, my first response is not to accept it. My first response is to ask, how do I get over it, around it, or through it? Only when I've exhausted those do I consider acceptance. But if I find it unacceptable, I'm not going to sit put. I'm relentless. And that's one of the reasons I do all I do. I've also written 5 books and gotten a master's in social work.
Okay, where's your cape? I don't see your Superman cape here. Where is it?
You don't need one. These are all human capacities. But what it essentially boils down to is we are raised on a steady diet of self-doubt, criticism, comparison, and everything else you can think of that kind of has us all assessing ourselves as not good enough somehow. I'm not good enough because I'm not wearing this jacket, or I'm not wearing, back in the day when I was in high school, the Trapper Keeper was the thing to have. I'm a child of the 80s.
Yep.
You had to wear the Izod shirts. Nowadays, I don't know what the in thing is or which influencer's line of products you're obligated to be using this week. But there's always this pressure of, if you're not wearing what we're wearing, using the lingo that we are, watching the same shows we are, well, you're just not in with us. So we're not taught self-acceptance or self-expression. We're taught, join the crowd, stay with the class, don't work ahead. And that's what we're taught to do. Act normal, act like everyone else. Individuality is discouraged, and yet, when you're neurodivergent, individuality is all you got.
Yes.
So if that's really discouraged, there isn't a whole lot of room for you to show up in the world without getting a lot of grief for it.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that you and I discussed before we went live is how important it is to share your story confidently to destigmatize it.
Yes.
All of my experiences, I put it out there as though other people's problems are more similar to mine than different, because as human beings, we kind of live in this steady current of suffering, of adversity, of disappointment. And we all have that in common. And there isn't a whole lot of our daily experience that doesn't have elements of that. I felt let down. I felt like I failed. I was looking forward to this and it didn't happen. If you come from that standpoint of, I had this letdown, I had my hopes up and I felt disappointed. You don't need to know everything about autism. You don't need to know everything about how neurotypicals think. You just need to share that experience. You know what that feels like.
Wow.
When you normalize things, when you talk about this is part of the human experience, this is what mine looks like. You have this human experience too, regardless of the facade and masks that you walk around with. You're not fooling anybody who's paying attention. I know you're just like me. Let's meet each other on that level. Now, neither one of us needs to feel alone and afraid anymore.
My heart, I love that.
That's where I come from, wanting to connect with everyone on a human level. And all the neurodivergent folks that I work with, that's the foundation I help them build. Discover what it is about you that is human. Learn to embrace that. Demonstrate self-compassion towards it. Learn to have patience and grace. Because until you can do it internally, there's no chance of you extending it to anyone else. And if there's anything that is really missing in this world, it's finding enough people to listen. Everybody's so outraged and pissed and online and talking about what upset them or offended them this week, and nobody's listening to anyone.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the reasons people have this unleashed anger or anxiety is because there's no space for them to put language to their experience.
What do you mean when you're talking about putting language to their experience?
They know they have this intense discomfort. They feel off center. They feel unsafe, but they can't let their guard down long enough to say, is this anxiety or is this disgust or what is it? Because they're too busy having to remain on alert.
Do you help your clients with that? Do you help your clients with that then, putting language?
Oh, gosh, yes.
Okay.
Not only find the language, but find out what continues to make it unsafe to do that internal work. And a lot of it is they've surrounded themselves with stressors. They binge watch serial killer shows on Netflix, or they watch the news, or they talk to their friend who's always dumping their bad day, and they always feel like the fireman that's waiting for the alarm to go off so that they can jump on the truck.
Mm-hmm.
So boundaries becomes a big part of it. You need to carve out that space instead of thinking that you were born and raised to people please for the rest of your life. And you can never meet your own needs because everyone else comes first. That's 101 in terms of the things you need to unlearn.
I love that.
Did I mention I work exclusively with women?
Interesting to find a man who works exclusively with women. Why? Why women?
Well, some of it is just logistics, and the other part of it is I have such a high degree of emotional intelligence. I'm highly empathic. I'm very sensitive. So I feel emotional energy around me. No matter how happy the faces are, if somebody's miserable, I'll know it. And it feels awful. So I didn't grow up with listeners. I grew up with a bunch of angry people. Everybody in my family was angry. So they didn't want to hear when I was upset or feeling depressed because they would say, you don't know what problems are. Get away from me with that nonsense. I got my own problems. No support.
Oh, that's so terrible.
So I learned to suck it up. Maybe find a teacher here or there who would listen to me for a few minutes. but nobody who could help me put language to all of my experience. Because when you put language to it and you speak it and sunlight hits it, shame evaporates.
Totally agree.
So the fact I didn't have language for it meant all that energy had to stay inside. There was nothing to attach it to. The language grabs onto the energy so you can speak it out.
I wonder if this is just something that I intuitively felt after my oldest daughter was diagnosed with dyslexia at 12 and a half. I told her, other people are going to take their cues on how to treat you around this dyslexia from you. So if you are approaching this all shameful and like it means you're stupid and stuff, then other people are going to treat you that way. But if you're like, hey, yeah, I am not your girl for editing your paper. Sorry. And oh, by the way, I can't spell. So, I might need you to help me out with that. And just totally matter of fact, then other people are going to go, oh, okay, cool. And it took a little while for her to, kind of embrace that. But once she did, things changed completely for her. It was fabulous.
Yeah. If you treat it like it's normal, they will too.
Yeah.
When I went through chemotherapy when I was 18 for cancer, it was my graduation present from high school. Okay?
Oh, God.
And that was what my first book was about. But I was always cracking jokes for the hospital step. Everybody was morbid because there was an 18-year-old in here with cancer, right? So while everybody else was, genuflecting and crossing and saying prayers before they came in, I was cracking jokes and flirting with the nurses and doing anything that I could to keep the mood light. Now, I wasn't always that way. There were times where I was pissed off and screaming and woe is me, but I saw opportunities to just lift the tension for a little bit. And when it comes to things like chronic conditions, mental illness, developmental challenges like dyslexia or autism, and people that are, quote, typical, only know how they roll.
Yes, it took a long time for me to figure out how my girls roll.
So the advice that you gave, which is when you self-advocate, talk about, hey, this is what I do. This is why I do it. In the event that I do it, this is what you can do.
Mm-hmm.
It's like introducing our roles. These are our responsibilities. If we want to connect and spend time together, these are some extra rules of engagement you might not be familiar with. So here you go. Try these on and we're going to be cool. Now, a frequent one for me is, and it's so heartwarming when I see my boys doing this, looking at a 45-degree angle when speaking instead of looking directly at the person.
Oh, okay.
And that's just because it is far easier to communicate when I get to focus on what I'm saying instead of simultaneously focusing on your whatever responses to it, because I do not sensorily multitask. And I certainly do not process two streams of information well at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can totally get that. Like my oldest daughter has this this habit of all of a sudden she's just done with whatever it is, wherever we're going, whatever we're doing, whatever she's going on a party or whatever, she's just all of a sudden had enough. She's ready for everybody to get out and go home and leave, or she will go hide. And I was baffled by it for a long time. I was like, what is going on? And finally, as soon as I recognized that as a pattern and she's just done, I was like, oh, I see. I was able to start seeing the subtle mood shifts that were leading up to I'm done. And then able to make accommodations for that and say, oh, okay, this is what's going on. And this is what we need to do. We need to go home, and then it was much, much nicer than, oh, she just doesn't like me. She doesn't want to do this. She doesn't want to hang out with us or whatever. Her brain is just like fried, done, all done with people.
Do you have a word to describe that experience?
No.
Best word I found is saturation.
Ah, okay. All right.
Can't hold any more. Completely filled up sensorily, a lot more than can be processed or regulated.
Yeah, she just it's remarkable. It's a flip, and she's just
Well, keep in mind that neurodivergent folks tend to default to the all or nothing way of experiencing things, right? So it's not going to be until she could be in a burning house, and it's not going to be until her pants are on fire that she smells smoke. Okay. So
Yeah.
when it comes to the saturation, my wife does this for me a lot. She is aware of what my little escalation points look like
Yeah,
you
that's what
spotting your dog. So she'll check in with me and she'll say, "You're getting all red. Are you feeling okay?" And I get flushed when I'm reaching saturation.
Okay.
So it's not subtle. And I wasn't aware of this stuff because I'm too busy trying to hold it together.
Right. Okay.
Right. So when she spots that stuff, she knows to check in. And like you said, mood changes. With me, it's attention. I'll start looking totally zoned.
Okay.
So when she sees that, she'll come and touch my shoulder and whisper in my ear, "I'm ready to go now." She probably doesn't know I realized the little things she's doing to preserve my ego.
I was just
And
thinking that, but I didn't want to say it.
I love her to pieces for it. And I let her have that because she lets me have it.
Mm-hmm. I love that. So families and friends can learn how to read these signals and stuff and help.
Well, not so much learn to read them, but work in partnership
Mm-hmm.
with the person so that they know what's happening to them.
But that takes a receptive person
Yeah.
to hear that, and not everybody's receptive. I somebody that, you know, this man that I've loved my entire life, my entire adult life, not so receptive to some of these things.
So you're saying that there are some people that aren't teachable?
I mean,
What's up with that?
yeah.
I mean, what happened to the memo that clearly states you and I know everything?
Right.
And if we start talking, people should just listen and do what they're told.
Right? Yeah. No, I mean, if he would just listen to what I think, his life would be so much easier, right? And so would mine. I mean, I've got all the answers, right? Yeah. No.
My dear bride routinely shares that meme with me.
Can
do it your way, or you can do it the way your wife told you in the first place.
I love it. Okay. So what is it about you that you were able to be this unstoppable force instead of curling up in a little ball and feeling sorry for yourself all day long and not accomplishing anything?
Hands down, it was the cancer.
Wait, what?
Said hands down, it was the cancer when I was 18.
That is not what I was expecting you to say. How?
I lived in a bubble. I was, when you grow up a kid with ADHD and autism, I was very introverted.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have much of a social circle. I did some extracurricular activities, but for the most part, I resisted kind of going out into the world. The only job I had was for my parents' business. I'd work when I needed a little pocket money, but I didn't have to go and do like the 40-hour week or however much they were paying or hiring for back in those days. So I really overestimated how much I knew, how mature I was, how ready I was for the world, what I thought was true and right. As teenagers, we know everything. And then literally overnight, I have a phone call saying, get to the next state. Because I lived in the Chicago area, and there was a research study happening at Indiana University Hospital in Indianapolis. So the call we got was, his cancer is growing, it's spreading like wildfire. Get him to Indianapolis by tomorrow morning. They know you're coming. So, and this was, okay, you're sitting down so I can tell you this part. 2 weeks prior, I'd received a call that I was accepted unanimously to Ringling Brothers Barnum Bailey Clown College in Florida.
Wait, there's a clown college?
There was. The circus closed down during COVID and stuff because they couldn't keep it open. But yes, there was a clown college. They trained and hired their own clowns. And there was,
so
it's harder to get into clown college than it is to get into Harvard.
So you, who had spent your childhood kind of in a little bubble and not putting yourself out there, wanted to go to clown college.
Clown college, there's a separation between you and the audience. You just get to stand there with all those eyes on you and do what you think is fun. You get to be that individual we were talking about earlier. Okay. You get permission to be an individual when you were on stage.
Okay.
It's very liberating. Then the makeup and the funny clothes, You can infuse that character with all of your quirks.
Okay.
And it will be just seen as part of the show. That's just, how it goes. And you get to feel embraced for those quirks.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So why a lot of introverts and undiagnosed Aspies, dyslexics make it into the entertainment realm.
Okay.
I recently saw an interview with Tom Cruise, and he said he works 7 days a week. He loves working. He hates taking days off. His life is all about entertaining. And all I heard was, I cannot sit still if I'm not people pleasing. That's what I heard. I don't know that's what he meant. I don't have an opportunity to clarify with him, but that's just how that landed with me.
Do you think he would necessarily know? Like, would that, or could that be a subconscious
if he did, there's a point at which you're so all into something, you don't see a way out. And this is a guy that generates major bank for studios. He's also so profoundly dyslexic, he cannot read, period.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
Not about him?
He has an assistant that records all his dialogue. And then he either sits in his trailer or walks around the set listening to the dialogue. That's how he learns it.
Well, that sings to my unschooly heart, because, I am all about, let's not spend gazillion hours shoring up our weaknesses. Let's learn how to, mitigate, accommodate, or delegate, or eliminate those weaknesses and focus on our strengths. So that makes me all sorts of happy. That's cool.
I refer to that as being resourceful. Look what resources you have that can solve the problem in the same or similar way without having to do it like everyone else. Like, I use a wheelchair to get around most of the time now. And I really beat myself up when I could tell it was getting harder to walk and I was going to need something. So I started with the cane, then to a walker, and to the wheelchair. And my wife was standing there holding me each time when I was resisting buying it, because I knew what it meant. I would have to grieve a loss. I would have to learn to accept more vulnerability. I had to deal with greater feelings of helplessness. I have to let go of this idea of being independent even more and embrace interdependence as a greater part of how I navigate life, and not just think, well, I'm independent in every which way. No, I'm cutting out of that game early, unfortunately.
I mean, everything you just said, all I heard was brave. That's just absolutely astonishingly brave and beautiful.
Well, back to the cancer.
Okay.
The one feeling that I felt primarily that scared the ever loving crud out of me was I felt helpless.
Okay.
Because my doctors weren't giving me straight answers when I'd say, is the chemo working? I'd say, oh, we like what we're seeing. Okay, so is that a little? Is it killing the cancer? Little? Is it a lot? Where are we at? You think you're going to be able to cure me? Well, we're confident, we're going to have a good, nobody would go on the record with anything. So there was this big black tunnel of uncertainty in my future. And my family wasn't coping with it. Remember the angry people I told you about? If I'd bring up vulnerable feelings, it would make them tap into their feelings of vulnerability, which they were not comfortable with. So they'd have to lash out at me to get me to drop the subject, so they didn't have to deal with their own vulnerability. So it turned into insults, minimizing what I was going through. Classic Dr. Phil dysfunctional family kind of thing, Okay. And when I got the word, I just celebrated on September 26th, I just celebrated 34 years cancer-free. And I celebrate that every year, because on that day, I decided many things, one of which was I will never resign myself to feeling helpless again. So I have a rule that I don't do helpless. If there's a problem that I feel is unacceptable and changeable, I will be relentless in doing something to change it.
Okay.
That's one of the reasons why I keep going. I also, because it was back in '88, we didn't have cell phones or texting or anything.
Right.
And because this all happened after I graduated, I couldn't call a phone tree or send out a blast email and tell all my friends what was going on. So I essentially had no support. My friends were going to school and off to college and working, and there were a handful of folks that came initially, but then they got on with their own lives. You know, they can't make me the center of their universe.
Mm-hmm.
But at the time, I thought they don't care. If they cared, they'd be here. So my inner dialogue was very isolating and blamey and bitter, and just left me feeling isolated, alone, invisible. And I also determined, and I decided on that the day I learned about my remission, that no one is ever going to feel alone in my presence if there's anything I can do about it.
Yes, I love that.
And I've been operating from these decisions for the past 34 years. And I look to get better and better and better and better at it so that I can impact more people.
Mm-hmm.
There's an epidemic of loneliness and comparisonitis and outrage and all kinds of things that make us feel alien to one another. Then you throw in difference, diagnosis on top of that.
Yeah.
The more we can dispense with all of these layers of bias and prejudice and politics and difference and whatever it is, and just realize you're talking to another human being, and talk about our shared suffering, our shared hope, our shared dreams, which is to belong and connect with our fellow human beings, we can all relate on that level. So to say, keep it super simple. Keep it super simple.
Mm-hmm.
That's the KISS formula, by the way. Keep it super simple.
Oh, yep. Love it. That's awesome.
So that's where I'm coming from.
So how do you strike a balance then? I mean, if you're living in chronic pain as well as, you know, a multitude of other things, and your brain isn't always cooperating with what you need it to do to maintain a peaceful kind of existence inside your own head, how do you strike a balance between allowing yourself to rest? I mean, how do you know when you just need to go, okay, I need to not push through this right now, versus, oh yeah, this is just something I'm going to have to keep on keeping on with?
That remains a work in progress. And I think with anyone, you're juggling between the needs of your body and the needs of your heart. Because you want to belong, you want to be connected, but you also need to rest before you fall over.
Right.
And whichever need of those is most unmet at the time is the one that will tend to get your attention. So if you haven't hung out with people in a long time and you're feeling really disconnected, you may ignore your body in favor of more time with these people to fill your bucket of connection and belonging.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's like people who stay out way too late and they say, oh, but we were having such a good time. They didn't care that they weren't sleeping.
Mm-hmm.
They were so connected and energized and getting so much oxytocin and dopamine and all that fun stuff.
Mm-hmm.
One way to really, and this is a self-discipline issue, one way to be more consistent in that area is when you somehow document your values. And one of the ways I do that is I make a point of saying them often. And just today, somebody was talking about how they overdid it and how they need to put themselves first. And I responded, that's right, self-care first. And that's akin to put on your oxygen mask before your kids.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to give, make sure you have it to give. And make sure you have some left over for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So in declaring things like self-care first and saying it often, I hear it every time I say it. The other person hears it once, I hear it as many times as I say it. So that's a way of practicing.
I like it.
You practice it while simultaneously applying it.
Okay.
Because far too often, I don't know about your kiddos, but I have the memory of a gnat.
Yes, my girls are like that.
So if someone says,
typical your neurotypical overachiever who reads to learn, who is strategic and organized. He's thinking 6 steps ahead. He's very, type A.
Everything we wish we were.
Pretty much, yeah. And then my girls are, squirrels all over the place. Which one do I follow?
Well, you definitely have both extremes of the pendulum represented in your family.
Yes, I do.
Well, I don't know if you've noticed, but I'm good with language.
Yes.
When I had all of my testing done, I learned that my working memory is in the 3rd percentile, which is horrible. But I learned my language ability is in the 99.6 percentile.
Wow. Okay.
The doc said it would have been 100%, but I was a little slow answering one of the questions.
Okay.
So I officially hate time tests.
Yeah.
It's not that I liked them before.
Working memory is a challenge. That makes all sorts of things challenging.
I have to write down a lot.
Yeah.
But in terms of the workaround, I see courses all the time for work on your working memory. Strengthen it, make it more reliable. And I'm just thinking, who are you kidding? That's like telling the blind man, see clearly in 24 hours or less. It's not going to happen. I know my brain just doesn't do it. However, I need to be able to take responsibility for facts, dates, appointments that I'm going to be responsible for. So you have tech, Google Calendar, reminders, all kinds of things that can buzz in your pocket or put a pop-up on your screen so that it helps keep you accountable.
Mm-hmm.
So I am leveraging technology, being resourceful to bridge that gap between the results that I want and my brain's ability to create them.
Yes. I like it.
That's what we do. And I'm convinced that, not that there's a lot of doubt around this, all the engineers at Apple who come up with these cool technology things, I bet you they're creating this stuff for themselves too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see that.
Because people that think in traditional linear ways don't invent things like an iPhone.
Right.
They're the ones that say, they're the same ones who are lining up to tell Thomas Edison, these gas lights in the street, they're not going anywhere. Forget this light bulb nonsense. It takes an Edison to look at it and say, this status quo thing, we can do better.
Yeah.
And I look at the status quo of how we communicate with one another, and we cause each other so much unnecessary pain because of how bad we are at speaking honestly and directly, but kindly to one another.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that. So strategies for fixing that, for improving that. What do you do?
Well, it's, you're not flipping a magic wand or anything.
Yeah.
A big part of that is understanding kind of where you stand with it all. Who am I in this world? Who am I in relationship to other people? What's my reputation with myself? Do I look at myself and say, man, you're a loser, you suck, you're a waste of space, you make everybody's life miserable? Or do you think, I'm worth fighting for, I'm worth caring about, my needs matter? You're not going to take risks, you're not going to be vulnerable or open yourself up if you feel you're not worth taking a chance for. So one of the things I really impress upon people is that your story is not the reason you ought to hide. Your story is the reason you ought to tell your story. So you can be heard, you can be seen, you can be validated. And someone else who thought they were alone looks at you and says, I'm not alone.
Absolutely. That's why I speak openly about my family's struggles with mental health issues and substance abuse and stuff, because I want people to see that other, families who have loved ones that struggle with those kind of things look more like mine than they do like any, stereotypical person who has hit absolute rock bottom and is, some sort of criminal who's covered in filth and stuff, because that's not, they do, those poor sad souls do exist, but that's not the norm in, when you're dealing with mental health issues and substance abuse. Most of it's people that look just like me. And so I speak openly about it because I got tired of feeling like a fraud. All the people all that think I had everything all together. My marriage was perfect and all that other jazz. I'm like, no, nope, 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 no. And as soon as I started speaking openly about it, things started getting better. And I had people messaging me, hey, I thought I was the only one. I thought I was the only one in the homeschooling community. It's a weird thing to have somebody speaking about that. But I was like, well, this is why I have the social capital to be able to speak openly about it and not have a lot of judgment, not have any fear. Some people don't, like I don't live in any fear of, retribution or anything like that from these issues. And so I can speak openly. But as far as like the neurodivergencies and stuff with my girls, I speak openly about that too, because, my girls are really smart kids, but their brains think completely differently than mine. And learning how to navigate that as a parent was really, really important. And my failure to recognize that I was dealing with those kinds of things early on was damaging to them.
As a parent, I would encourage you to cut yourself a little slack on that. Because I don't know too many parents that say, I got to keep a close eye on everything that might be wrong about my children. So many of parents in general are looking for confirmation that they're good parents. Mm-hmm. So they're going to look at, hey, well, my kid got a good grade today, or hey, my kid's got a new friend, and you're looking for those little wins. You're not looking for the, wow, that looks like a developmental delay. I think we need to call a professional. We don't do that to ourselves typically.
Yeah, I mean, but as a homeschooler, I was seeing my oldest daughter's progress through things, and I was teaching writing classes. That's my background, is in English language arts and stuff. And so I'm looking at her and looking at the stuff that she's turning in, and I'm like, I know, I just listened to you talk about this. You're so smart, and you have such a great vocabulary, and your sentence structure as you're speaking is really sophisticated, and you're turning this paper in that looks like, you're
listening to me talk, aren't you?
your little kid turned it in. The sentences were very simple. Her spelling was atrocious. Her grammar was even worse. And I'm like, I don't get it. I don't understand. But she could read. And
when you're dealing with dyslexia is not just about reading. It's about language processing.
Yeah.
So you can speak articulately, but if somebody asks you to read, you can, maybe if it's simple, you're stumbling around, your eyes aren't tracking, you can't remember what you're reading. So it's like those language abilities are the difference between China and the United States. Mm-hmm. They're both countries, right? But they can't talk to each other.
Right.
Those are very different abilities. When I worked hospice, it was my first job out of grad school. And one of our patients was a lady that had a stroke. And she could not speak. She could babble, but her ability to speak coherently was gone. However, if you asked her to sing what she wanted to say, she could speak clearly.
I've heard of that before.
Yep.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that. I always thought if a kid had dyslexia, that kid would not learn how to read without intervention. And so my kid.
There was also a time when there was just autism. There was no spectrum. Uh-huh. So dyslexia was narrowly defined as the letter reversal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That was the typical, because that was measurable. It was very obvious. Mm-hmm. In my case, I have what's most referred to as a comprehension dyslexia. I can look at it. I can read the individual words. I can maybe read a sentence, but after I read a paragraph, I have no idea what the heck I just read. Mm-hmm. Doesn't make any sense to me. Hmm. But you wouldn't know that. You couldn't really measure that. Mm-hmm. Not objectively. You'd have to do things like have me read a story and then tell you about what I read. It was a disaster when I did that part.
I can imagine. Now, how did you make it through school without having your self-esteem just shredded?
I am big on learning through dialogue. What'd you think about this? Hey, did you read chapter so-and-so? Yeah, what was your main takeaway from that? So
you were resourceful. Yes, I love it.
Yeah, so I would maybe read through it and get what I could. Uh-huh. And then I would reach out to other people to fill in the gaps. And one of the best things about getting a social work degree is discussion is such a heavy part of the coursework. So anything you're reading, you're also discussing, and you're going to discuss the stuff the teacher thinks is important for you to know. So it helps you narrow down where you need to focus. And this was easily a decade or so before I knew I had dyslexia and Asperger's and any of this stuff.
How did you find out that you had all
my oldest started school, and he went into crisis and started melting down and turning over chairs and running out of the building, and we had to get him assessed, and this is Asperger's, and I started studying what it was, and I started reading all of these different qualities and characteristics, and the red flags were going off like crazy.
And you're like, plunk, 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 all of the things that didn't make sense before.
And it explained my brothers and my father and my uncles, and it really opened Pandora's box in my family.
Oof.
Answered a lot of questions.
I can imagine, because as soon as my kid was diagnosed, I was like, oh, that explains why she does that. That explains why she does that.
Oh, it's really not personal. Okay.
Yeah. Yep. Very, very interesting. Okay. So you have authored 5 books. Is that what you said? Okay. What do you write about?
The first book was on what I described about my cancer experience, that feeling hopeless, feeling helpless, and then rediscovering that sense of hope and curiosity, and how I made that transition and how I began to rebuild the foundation of my life. So that was the first book. Then I wrote a children's story about an autistic squirrel who, because of his anal retentiveness, was able to save the forest when a flood came through.
Oh!
So there's that. It's got illustrations from a guy I've lost touch with, beautiful illustrations. Then I wrote a book of poetry. When I first was diagnosed with the Asperger's, I was really big into writing poetry. I love to write. I write very prolifically.
Okay,
don't read. But I need text to speech to read it back to me, so I know it's right, because I leave words out, I misspell things.
Okay, yep.
Stuff's in the wrong order, so I know, oh, that's where I need to look at it and change something. But just reading it, I'll miss it. I'll miss all those errors.
Okay.
So what was I saying?
Books. You
books.
Poetry. You're on poetry.
So that was my way of reflecting and also being a little creative at the same time as writing poems. So I wrote a book which was all about me reflecting on getting to know myself, getting to know the Asperger's, and I wrote a series of poems on how I processed that all out. I turned that into a book. And then another one was when I was really starting to be sought out for how well I could articulate the experience of my children, what they were thinking, what they were feeling, with absolute precision in a way other professionals couldn't do it. Because not only am I aware of it, because I've done the personal work since the cancer to really learn how to be more disciplined and more self-determined and less self-sabotaging. And we know people who are neurodivergent, they have all those challenges with the self-sabotage and the bad self-talk. And I've spent decades unpacking that and learning how to deal with it effectively, skillfully. So when other parents started to see what kind of results I was getting, not only for my own kids, but for myself, and they found out I was a social worker, they wanted to bring their kids to me. Well, I had a day job. I never saw myself as somebody solving the problem. I saw myself as I'm just somebody else with the problem. Mm-hmm. But enough of them said, you don't understand. You teach us things no other professional has said. We promise if you hang out your shingle, we will come and we will tell all our friends. And I got sick enough of my day job. My son was in even more crisis. I was being called 3 days a week easy to talk him out from under a desk, to problem solve because he was in crisis, to listen to some educator. They weren't taking care of him. They were annoyed with him. So it was getting hard for me to keep my boss happy because my son was needing so much. So that was the leverage I needed to take the risk.
Okay.
I got a part-time office space that I did in the evenings, and these moms kept their promise. They came with their kids, they told their friends, and in 4 months working part-time, I replaced my daytime income.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
Wow, you definitely filled a need there.
So yeah, there was a big need. And that was 2006.
Okay.
And I've been doing this ever since, entirely online since 2008, 2009.
How has the business evolved then, since then?
It has had to become much more hands-off, because before I could do 4 or 5 sessions a day, hour-long sessions, and I'd be pumped afterwards. Now I sit up for an hour and I need to lay down. Halfway up the stairs, I'm out of breath. I've got my foot drop likes to change sides. If you don't know what foot drop is, it's you're walking along, you're trying to lift your toes to take a step, but it stays, the toes drop like you're trying to step backwards, so your toes drag essentially.
Oh, well,
and it's very, very easy to trip over your own feet. You're constantly at risk for a fall.
Mm-hmm.
And I was somebody who liked to climb through national parks, explore trails, bike rides. Can't do any of that because my body just doesn't have it.
So you've really had to completely reinvent yourself.
Yeah. And I've really had to learn to harness my skill with language, because when I'm messaging back and forth, either in my membership, which I have on Discord, or if I'm messaging back and forth with clients who have a question for me, I can tell them what to do or ask them a question or give them guidance with such precision because of my skill with language that they don't need to talk to me. Okay. Now, there are some that I will talk to on occasion because they just need someone there to listen while they talk it out. And I'm happy to do that with folks. But it's not that often that's actually necessary. Because you can encourage someone to journal, and that does a lot for putting language to experience and get it out of your head. Not quite the same as speaking it would, but similar enough to where you can gain more perspective and get out of that reactive mode because you got it out of your system. So it can clear your head enough where someone can come back to me and say, this is what I journaled. Then I can look at their language, get a sense of what their thinking is like, and recommend some tweaks, just like I would support them if I was talking to them. And that allows me a wide berth of time to get the self-care where I need it.
That's how you're striking that balance then.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So what are your clients typically finding you for when they're searching? What are they searching? What are they searching for? What are
they are searching usually for specific, they usually come up with an issue, and it's around parenting typically. And they talk about, I'm having trouble, my kid's got ADHD, my kid's got autism, or my kid's got this. And they start talking about the stuff that I deal with. And I am so active on my Facebook profile that the people who follow me know exactly what I do. So I'm routinely being tagged in different groups. You got to talk to Brian King. You got to follow Brian King. So I'm fortunate enough in all these years that I've developed reputation of kind of being one of the go-to people. So I've got that top of mind familiarity where people routinely are recommending me. So I have people coming into my world that way. I also have a newsletter. So people that are subscribed to that will read something that is particularly relevant to them, and they'll say, you know what, now I think it's time I reach out to him.
Okay.
Because now I feel like this has gotten to the point where I must deal with it. And the parents, unfortunately, tend to gravitate towards the all or nothing way of dealing with life. There's also that denial aspect. Who wants to admit their kid is struggling, that their kid might have a developmental delay? So they wait until it's too late often, till there's a crisis.
Yeah.
Which I strongly discourage, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, having my daughter diagnosed was a relief for both of us. It was, okay, now we can deal with it. Now
Right.
we know exactly what's going on, and we can attack
It,
it. That's
it's
not
like
what.
you're in the dark and someone hands you a
Yeah.
spotlight.
Yep. Yeah. It was, when we were, it was really interesting because, as we're driving along to the neuropsychologist, my daughter looked at me, she's like, Mom, I hope they find something wrong with me. She's like, I don't want this to just to be because I'm dumb. I want there to be something there. And
Do you realize what a huge statement that was?
yeah, I was like, you're not dumb. I can tell you're not dumb just by listening to you. But yes, I mean, that I know exactly how that feels. So, but with physical stuff, I go to a doctor and I'm like, I hope they tell me there's something wrong with me because I feel like garbage all the time. And all of these doctors were saying, "Oh, you're perfectly healthy. Try some supplements." I'm like, "No, I mean, whatever." And finally, every time I'd come back, with nothing, it was not helpful. It was discouraging. And so I knew exactly what she was talking about with the, I hope they find something so that I know it's not me and I'm not just dumb.
Well, not only that, but if what is going on with you is causing you suffering, you're hoping there's something they can do about it.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. So, okay. So are the women that you work with, are they neurodivergent themselves, or are they looking for help for their kids typically?
They're predominantly moms who initially looking for help for their kids.
Mm-hmm.
And then as we're talking, it becomes clearer that they have more in common than they don't. But the main focus of my membership is teaching mom how to take care of mom.
Oh, okay.
Because mom is often martyred into thinking, I have to be the super special needs mom, celebrating my child's superpower, and not speaking honestly about any of the downsides because I'm accused of being ungrateful and all that other BS that's coming out of the rah-rah propaganda side of the ADHD community or whatever. It's all a superpower. It's all a blessing. There's no difficulties at all. Yes, those people are out there.
Really?
But I recommend a balanced perspective, which means you have got to be aware of both. Like, you need to be mindful of your own strengths and challenges. Otherwise, you will not know where you need to ask for help.
Mm-hmm.
That's when you convince yourself, I'm competent across the board and I'm going to take unnecessary risks and do stupid stuff and break something else or myself because I can't admit that I might not be perfect at everything.
Okay.
That's the Dunning-Kruger effect. I encourage people to look that up too.
Okay. All right. So what does it look like for a client from start to finish? They're brand new to your world, haven't connected with you as a client yet, but they're looking at it. What does the process of working with you ultimately look like for them?
Well, the process of working with me is they typically have to hone in on an issue they want to address.
Okay.
Whether it's communicating better with their child, handling, reducing arguments, helping their child manage their anxiety better, trying to educate the school system, teaching them how to write more effective letters when they're advocating, finding the language they need. But basically, learn how to live in a very balanced, self-compassionate way so you can embrace your imperfections and identify them as human. I'm human. By definition, I am imperfect. This doesn't make me less than, not good enough, stupid, inferior, whatever you want to call me. It makes me human. And just because others might deny this about themselves, it just means they're fooling themselves. But we know what's going on. So it's just being human. So I emphasize peeling away those layers of conditioning. Get rid of as many of the shoulds as you possibly can. Mm-hmm. Because it's the shoulds that tell us we're not good enough.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Anything that might have been handed down in terms of very biased gender roles that tell them their needs don't matter and everybody else has to come first, we unpack that. Because what needs to be left is their appreciation of themselves as an equal, deserving, love-worthy human being who is allowed to make mistakes, extend herself some grace, pick herself back up and move forward with confidence and gratitude instead of shame, blame, and all that nonsense.
Like it. So what's the how is your program structured? then?
I have a couple different offerings. I have my membership program, which is a Discord community where we have content. I share videos. We have fantastic conversations. It's a big love fest in there. The ladies are so good to one another. It's very safe and very patient and compassionate. And I also offer 2 calls every single week. So they get access to me twice a week live, where they can all jump on and we brainstorm things and support one another. And sometimes there's tears, but there's a lot of laughter because I'm a goofball. So in between helping them find their own wisdom and sharing some of my life experiences, we laugh. Because life can easily get too serious. We have to remember that it's all pretty absurd.
Well, if the guy who's sitting in a hospital bed at 18 with cancer can laugh his way through it, then yeah, I think you can bring that to your community too. That's incredible. Okay, what else?
I do one-to-one, and I like to primarily support my clients in that case through a program called Voxer, which, if you aren't familiar with that, you can send audio clips back and forth, text back and forth. And it's not like you texted my phone once, then you texted me in Messenger, then you emailed me. It keeps all the communication in one place. So it's much easier to have real-time exchanges, and people can contact me anytime they want to. So they're not beholden to, well, we talked this week and I have to keep everything bottled up until next week when we can process it and do no work in between. So they can message me and we can keep going and building on the momentum. Another cool thing I just remembered, members of my group, my membership, often have therapists that they see in person. And many have reported that because they have my community to process things, and because I'm a trained therapist, I know how to help them process things, their therapy works better. Because they have a space to do the work in between. So it's very win-win. It's a wonderful adjunct to getting regular therapy, because in the absence of that, you could be going to therapy every week. You're the only one in your circle who's doing that. So in between sessions, you really can't talk to anybody about what you're learning, what you're discussing. You can't process it because they might say, well, I didn't think you were messed up. What are you seeing the therapist for? The whole conversation goes sideways because they're not your people. But if you have a community of people committed to growth and listening and being there for each other, they celebrate it. You're doing the work. You're working on yourself. That's very brave. It's very loving for you to do that for yourself. So that's what I do.
I mean, what you do, I see as, legacy changing. It's incredible. When you change, because you're changing the physiology of somebody at the same time as you're changing their beliefs and their behaviors and their interactions with their kids, and you're changing those interactions with their kids, which changes their kids' physiology and beliefs.
It's a system. It's all connected.
And it's really legacy changing. Their grandchildren and great grandchildren are going to be different and better because of the work that you're doing with them. That's awesome. I love that.
I hope so. And I realize I'm one of many moving pieces in a person's life. And I just hope to show up and do my part so darn well that it can start a ripple effect that creates change in the system.
Okay. So, parting word of wisdom for somebody that is struggling but hasn't connected with you yet.
Somebody who's struggling, well, are they going to hear this if they haven't connected with me yet?
Well, maybe they're connected with me. I actually have a couple people I'm thinking of right now that I'm going to end up.
Okay. Give yourself permission to not know everything. Give yourself permission to say, I don't know. To say, I need to know more. I need to learn more. I need help. Because until you gave yourself that permission, you're not even going to talk to me.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. Yeah. I already know people who could really, really benefit from what you do. And so, yeah, this is incredible. I think this is great. I would have definitely benefited from it when right in the years before my daughter was diagnosed, but I'm not sure that I would have known to search, like I was just baffled by what was going on, but I didn't know what to do. But as soon as she was diagnosed, then, I mean, since I'm already got some of those unschooly things going on where, I believe in shoring up strengths rather than weaknesses and all that other stuff, I felt, relatively okay. But I mean, I see what you do as such an incredible gift and so valuable. I really love this.
Well, I appreciate that. Well, let's get the word out. There's always more people to help.
Definitely. Yeah, no, I definitely will be tagging some people, and this will be really easy for me to share in some homeschooling groups where, there are definitely people that would benefit from it as well. So awesome.
Outstanding.
Thank you so much for your time today. I thoroughly enjoyed this and learned a lot. And I feel like my vibrational energy is high and stuff because you're an inspirational person. I dig your energy. It's awesome.
Well, I got to tell you, being alive all of these years when I very well could not have been, there is far more to be excited about in my life than discouraged by.
Mindset. That's a
mindset.
Total.
Yeah.
How much of that do you think is a choice?
It's all a choice.
Okay.
Because we have 60 to 70,000 thoughts that come through our mind on a given day, right? 5% of which are reasonably within our realm of influence. So why wouldn't you decide that I want to prioritize looking at life through this lens versus the other lens? When somebody asks me, how come you just don't lay in bed all day and be miserable and just give up and file for, disability? I said, because those results suck. I don't like what's on the other end of that thinking, so I don't do it.
I mean, you make it sound so simple.
Okay, I didn't say easy, though. It's simple in that you can look at a map and say, here's where you're starting, here's where you want to end up. The bitch is the process. Okay? So it's all easy to talk about. I mean, it's simple to talk about it because we're just talking about ideas and whatnot. The execution is where we all get stumbled up. And that's why it helps for neurodivergent folks to have a community to support them. Because communities have a variety of skill sets where they can come in and help balance out where you struggle. So we succeed together.
I like the whole idea of we succeed together. The collaboration and mutual support is totally my thing.
Complementary skill sets, synergy.
Yep, definitely. So do you think that that there's something to the idea that self-pity is addictive? And
self-pity is addictive because it's strongly emotional. You feel deeply connected to yourself. Me, I.
Okay.
So it's almost like, you can talk to yourself in third person, right?
Yeah.
Brian, man, what the heck were you thinking? That was dumb. So you can almost trick yourself into thinking you are talking to another person and are having a moment of connection in your own head.
Right.
So where you are lacking connection with other people, you get it met by focusing on yourself. That's one of the reasons narcissists are so fulfilled, or so they seem. They spend all day in their own head talking about how wonderful they are. But that's an entirely different conversation.
Oh yeah, for sure. I am endlessly fascinated by people who have overcome enormous struggle that a lot of other people would just go, I quit, I give up, I'm just going to feel sorry for myself.
Nope.
I want to know what is different about the people that go nope versus what the people that just they feel so hopeless or helpless that they just won't. I think
one difference is that I believe there is some way to change a circumstance that is unacceptable, and I believe that I can learn how to do that. People that often give up and are completely defeated feel completely disempowered. They don't think there's any action they can take. And that's when I usually have some interesting conversations with them to get them to admit they're choosing to not risk action.
Ooh, I bet those are intense conversations because you're
Well, when they realize they are actually making a change or a choice rather, wow, if that doesn't get things jiggling and moving and reconsidering their stance. But there's ways in.
awesome. Oh. I feel like there's so much more. But I want to respect your time as well. Thank you very much for your time today. I like I said, thoroughly enjoyed this. Once I end the live broadcast, I will go back through and tag you in the broadcast, and you can load your links in the comments section on my
Perfect
page, and that's how that works.
Awesome.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Beck. This has been a blast.
Yeah, I had a great time too. All
right.
Toodaloo, Facebook.
Take care.
Bye.